All right, thank you guys for joining us. Chris was just roster baiting with himself in his man cave there, telling us about all his Alabama spoils. So, first of all, John and Drew, do you guys have any questions on the pipeline stuff before we move on to the contract stuff?
I think I texted you the couple questions I had, just that, no one can take your pipeline players unless you've traded those rights away. And that's correct, right?
Yeah, as long as you don't trade your assets away, nobody can touch them. If you own Nebraska, I can't go and grab any of those players unless you trade me that Devy or you trade me that pipeline.
Okay, so this is what I'm a little unsure of. If no one can touch your players or Devy players if you don't trade those rights away, what's the point of the draft?
Well, here's the thing. You get those two, so you'll get the Devy rights and you'll get the pipeline rights. Now, if you're a team like Alabama, what we're just talking about, who's got 4 or 5 assets, that means you need to go and acquire more assets to use in those plays, because whoever you don't use your pipeline on, or if you have not Devied them, then they go into the rookie auction.
Right. So, but what I'm saying is, can you just pipeline a player at any point, or is there a pipeline draft?
No, yeah, we actually have, once you get issued your pipeline rights, you have a certain window where you declare who you're going to use those pipeline rights on. At that point, we'll go and create that custom player and populate them on your roster.
So there's probably like a deadline for everybody that you must submit your pipeline pick by this date type of scenario?
Yeah, I think we put it in right before the it's in the.
But John, you would only pipeline somebody that's elected to go to the NFL. So
right.
It's only going to be on a junior that's coming out, like Najee Harris said he's coming out to the NFL before he was drafted. We already know he's in there. But when he says I'm going to the NFL and he's drafted, you can say I want to tag him as my pipeline.
Okay.
You get one copy of him and the other copy goes into the rookie draft.
Okay.
If you decided not to use it on Najee and he wasn't debited on your team, both copies would go into the draft.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
So April is our deadline for nominating your pipeline player. But I mean, honestly, by that time, you know who you're going to use.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be enough mock drafts coming out saying, you can kind of tell who's the most valuable piece, the most valuable option that you have, basically.
Yeah.
Or go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it's the same, and like I was talking about acquiring assets. So if you have Alabama and you only have, 2 pipeline rights, all you can take is Waddle and Mac Jones. And now Devonta Smith, if you don't get another pipeline right, he's going right into the rookie draft. And then whoever's got that rookie pick, with the auction, now they could get him. And it really stings when you're watching one of the guys from your pipelines going in that rookie draft.
Well, and you had 2 cracks at it because you could have debied him, you passed then, and then you could have pipelined him. So you kind of had 2 shots at making sure you got him, right?
Yeah, but like the Devies are like a dart throw. Like I did this piece last year that if you look at the top 5 quarterback, running back, and wide receivers who finished the year in Dynasty top 5, only one of them was a 5-star.
Really? Wow.
There was actually Devontae Adams, who finished as the wide receiver 2, was a 2-star recruit.
Out of Fresno, right? I think he went to.
So you never know. I mean, it hits. A lot of people will just go to 247 Sports and they'll rack and stack by stars, and that's where they'll draft from. But you got to look at the depth charts. You got to look at what scheme they're running. All sorts of things like that. So, and you just got to be really fucking lucky too.
Yeah.
So, what else we got for pipeline?
If you get that down to a science, you should be working for an NFL franchise.
Yeah, well, we all should be anyway, right?
Right.
We're all our own GMs in our own minds.
I think the only question I have is on the poaching. So it sounds like, whatever pipeline you have a chance to Devy. You're, a player from there, or maybe there's a couple Devies. I'm sure that's in the rules anyway. But anyone you don't Devy, somebody else can grab. Is that right? As a Devy?
Unless you trade them one of your Devy picks, your pipeline is protected.
Oh, the pipeline. Okay.
Yeah, or your Devy, your when I say pipeline, I'm talking about your school.
Okay.
So yeah, if you have Alabama and there's 5 guys to Devy, I can't go and Devy your player.
Oh, okay.
You have to trade me one of your first or second round Devy picks for me to have the right to poach that.
Okay, I see that. I appreciate it. That makes sense.
So the best way to look at it, Drew, is your team is protected unless you give something away of yours that allows them access into your pipeline.
That is a good way.
It's protected. Now, if you don't Debbie the right players or pipeline the right players, those players, when they go to the NFL, they drop into the rookie draft.
Okay, so it's only when they go to the NFL.
It's all in your control.
Okay. That's the part I was missing. I appreciate it.
Yep. All right. So contracts.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. All right. So let me share my screen here. All right. So each owner will have 60 contract years to use as they like. Each owner will assign a contract to each player on their active roster. So in here also, you have to assign a minimum of 40 contract years, meaning, obviously you can't have 24 players and 23 years allocated. You need to at least get 40 years allocated on your team. To give a little bit more of an example of what the roster will look like, I pulled up one of the kitchen sink leagues, which is kind of a little bit of the basis of what we did. And you can kind of see, obviously don't pay attention to the salary because they're doing that, but you can see how they have it built on the year and how many years are left. Also, if they have a transitional player or a franchise player, that will also pop up there. So you can track, and everybody else can track how many years you have left on these players. And then obviously looking at the roster, you can also tell, well, obviously this guy's only really got one running back. So this guy's probably going to be looking for a running back, right? Because everybody else has either no years left or 1 year. This league is also from several years ago. So if the names throw you off, that's why. But, Chad Kelly, the guy that never came to fruition. But you can kind of see how that's tracked. So, and the Debbies and the taxi, obviously, I'm not sure exactly what they use for taxi requirements, but those will all be identified. So 60 years total for your 24 players. Have to allocate at least a minimum of 40 contract years. And then we're going to get into, some of the penalties for dropping players who still have contracts remaining. So obviously, if they have 0 years remaining, you have some options. You can make them a transition player, and that's down here. First, you can make them a franchise player. A franchise player will be automatically assigned a 1-year contract, and that resets them. You can only franchise one player at a time. All right. And if you do end up using the franchise tag, then you will relinquish $75 from your AP funds, which is what we use for the auction and the blind bidding. Now, so that's one. So if you've got a guy who's expiring, you really want to keep him, but you don't want to make him a restricted free agent, franchise him. It costs you $75 and you get to keep him for another year. Option 2 is the transitional player. And where the transition comes from, I'm not exactly sure. I know it's not politically correct. I think it has something to do with transitioning off of your team, but it's the same thing. They'll be automatically signed a 1-year deal, and you can do it an infinite amount of times, but there are the penalties, not a penalty, but a cost to doing that. So it will either be a 3rd-round pick, $70 from the auction funds, or $150, and then these costs double each year that you transition someone. So if you really wanted to keep a player, you could keep putting a transition tag on him, but it would just cost you more and more and more. So put a transition tag on this year, this is what it will cost. If you do it next year, then it's going to be a 2nd-round pick, $140 from your rookie fund, and then $300 from your all-purpose funds, and it just gets worse and worse. You know what I mean?
That's not the same though for a franchise player.
No, a franchise player is $75, and it's a one-time deal. You can only do it once per player.
Okay, so you can't franchise them every year.
Correct, but you could transition them potentially. But like I said, there goes the price.
Right.
Hey, Lane, how come? Why do they differentiate between a franchise and a transition? Why don't they just say why don't we just say franchise player and you can do it as many years as you want, but each year it goes up like you're doing the transition. It's just like you just changed the name, but doing the same concept.
Yeah, I think that the franchise they're trying to follow the NFL type rule where hey, you franchise one person a player and then you have to give them that $20 million deal.
Yeah.
Where the transition player, you don't necessarily have to. It's almost like a call up from the minors, for baseball.
And you would do that if we had that salary cap, but we're not doing salary cap, so.
Yeah. So it would just cost you future asset, future money and picks.
I was just thinking maybe we could eliminate all the verbiage that might confuse people when you say franchise versus transitional and just say one. But each year you do it, it just drives the price up. But.
Well, and that's only for the transition because the franchise, if you franchise a guy, you can only do it once and it costs you $75 and that's it. You can transition a guy as often as you want, but the price gets steeper and steeper.
Now, does the site allow you to tag them and it shows that they're transitional or franchised?
Yeah, right here, if you look, it shows transition.
I gotcha.
Yep. And then franchise.
Gotcha.
So there's also, if you can put two players, make them restricted free agents. So what that basically means is you're throwing them out there to say, hey, if you want this guy, come grab him, right? You can only do that to two players a season. So each owner, you can choose two players with expired contracts to label them as restricted free agents. There will be a period where we basically auction off on them. So basically, you always get the final right of refusal, though. So if you put up Saquon for $500 and I match that, then you either have to bid that or you have to give me that compensation for that.
Now, is it the owner of the person puts the bid out there, or is it like if you have Saquon, I want him, I put the 500, and then you have to match me to keep him?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, and my hope is that nobody takes him because then I can re-sign him.
So that's your way. You just have to tag two guys is that when their contract's up. So you put 2 years on Saquon, 2 years expire, you go tag him as a restricted free agent. Now he's out there for everybody to bid on, but you have the option to match that bid to keep him.
Correct. And if you do match that bid, then this is what you're gonna, if somebody, yes, you're correct. You have to match that bid. If somebody beats your bid or you don't want to match it, say you're selling Juju for $100 and I'm paying $500, obviously you're not going to match that. So this is what you would get in return for that. You would get $270 in AP funds and you get the future pick compensation of a first and a second.
Is that either or both?
It's either or. So that's one thing that we were kind of talking about in the chat today. And I apologize. I know the chat was getting a little crazy, just a lot of questions from all over the place. And, we're all working and trying to do our best to answer it at the same time. But one thing that we're going to allow this year is it's going to be an either or. It's not going to be a combination of.
Now that first and second, is it of any year or that year that you're doing it or what?
I believe it's going to be, I'm not sure about that. I think it would depend on where, because you're right. The values we'll have to talk about that because obviously
the values are different.
A 22 first is way better than a 23 or a 24 first.
Absolutely. And there's a difference between a potential 101 first and 124 first.
Yeah. So
they bring different cash values.
Yep. So we'll definitely talk about that and figure that piece out before. Okay. It might already be in here. I'm not 100% sure, but
I don't think it is because it's definitely something there's probably some little things we're going to have to iron out as we do this. It's a learning curve for a lot of us.
So it's the average value of the pick. I'll make a note of that. Which year is the pick?
Well, is the restricted free agent draft before or after the rookie draft?
That is before the rookie draft.
So then I see that April, and then May is the rookie auction. So in my head, it would be for that pick coming up.
Yeah, it should be for that year. Right. And I think that's where we're going with if you don't have that year's pick, then you still have to be able to compensate that player somehow. And even that's something maybe that you guys do together, or if we establish some sort of money limit or something like that. I know we said we didn't want to do a combination, but maybe if that's the case, then, if you don't have that assets, then, I mean, what are you supposed to do? And that's what we were kind of talking about, doing the option, because if you don't have a first or a second,
Maybe you can't bid on the restricted agent then.
exactly, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot to this. I think it makes you think. I mean, like you start trading away your future picks. Well, then might hurt you to try picking up any. And let's say you gain money and stuff, but if you go bidding on players, restricted free agency, you have to compensate. But if you ain't got nothing to compensate with, you might not be able to do it. So you might be digging yourself a hole. I don't know.
Also, I'm not suggesting that this would happen, but let's say that one person wants to gain 2 players that are $500. Granted, they'd be out of money, but they don't have 2 firsts and 2 seconds unless they've acquired them somehow.
Mhm.
So how would you only be able to?
You better go acquire them, I guess.
Yeah.
Or you can't, or you shouldn't be able to be able to bid on that player.
Okay.
Yeah, there's going to be definitely little. I mean, we won't know every caveat to this until we actually start playing and see when people start doing stuff, and then we go, oh wow, we didn't think of this.
Now, I did see that in the rules that you're only allowed to trade 1 year out for picks, correct?
You should be able to trade whatever picks you have allotted, and we usually do the next year's picks. Yeah. So
like
at
I
the
couldn't.
end of the year, there's
You'll always
going to be a
have
gap.
2 years. I think
Yeah,
2
there's
years
no
of
big
picks
gap.
on the books.
Yep.
So the current year and then the next year coming up.
So
Yep,
when we start
people are
playing
doing
this year, you'll have 22 and 23.
Okay. So I couldn't trade for a 24.
I don't
Now those players that are trading away a 2023 pick, are they going to be required to pay for their dues through that season at the time of the trade?
Well, that's the thing, is that that's why we kind of did the extra $50 to give those people that incentive, but potentially not. I mean, they could potentially leave the league that far
That's my
out.
only fear is let's say I trade away all of my picks for Pipeline and Debbie for the next 2 years to win it 1 year and then just leave and take my money. I'm not suggesting that I would do that, but there are people out there that will do that. And I don't know if they're in this league or not.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have those circumstances where somebody will go, all out to win it all and destroy their team doing it, and then they just don't really want to deal with the rebuild of it. At that point, they'll just leave, and really, there's nothing we can do about that. We can't keep charging people to, if you're going to be in the league long term, then that shouldn't be an issue. But I mean, we can't keep charging people extra just to hope they stay in the league. And that's kind of why we were very selective about who we put in this league as well. We don't want flakes and all that sort of stuff. But
that's fair.
It happens, We'll get a replacement if we need to.
Hopefully we don't.
Yeah, hopefully we don't. I mean, things happen, and people get too many leagues, and then their wives get mad at them for spending too much money, and then they have to bounce. Or some people don't like the rebuild process. I love the rebuild process, so I love taking on orphans and rebuilding them up. Sometimes you just have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not going to be competitive for 2 or 3 years, and just have fun with it. I've got a mix of win now, kind of middling ones and rebuilders. So it's all about the strategy, and that's what keeps it fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a lot of money. He can afford to lose for 3 years in a row.
Yeah. My wife always spends my promotion money before I even put the rank on. So, all right. So for your contracts, you can assign a 1 to a 4 year deal. Once those, obviously the penalties are pretty standard. But once the contract expires, so there's the 2 ways to do it. You can either just let them ride and say, fuck you very much. You're now a free agent. Anybody can grab them. You can make them the restricted free agent, which means that now everybody can bid on them and you have the opportunity to match. or get compensated. You can make them a franchise player, which will do an automatic 1-year contract and will cost you $75. Or you can make them a transitional player for a cost as well. So that's how we do the contracts.
And I think you said the only way you can give if they expire, you can let them walk and then rebid on them. And assuming you get that player, you can give them a new 4-year contract.
Yep, if it can
Whatever
make
you
it
wanna
through.
do.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, quite the risk, but yeah,
Right.
I mean, it's possible.
Right.
And
Because
that's
it
kind of
depends
like
on how much
the
cash
true
you
waiver.
got built up,
Yeah.
right?
And it's the true waiver wire. That's what happens when all the NFL does it. You kind of hope, oh shit, he put in a bid for him, and now I lose him to that team. So it is what it is. But the thing is, managing your contract years, you only get 60, and then at the next year, obviously, you get an additional 24. So you always have to get that. Always have to have at least 40 allocated, but 60 contract years to use any way you'd like. You just have to, and that's why we're talking about with the auction money. You have to be able to save enough money so you can spend something, because nobody's free. You can't spend $500 on Mahomes, $500 on McCaffrey, and then fill the rest of your team with free agents. Each player has to be at least $1. So that's why the $977 is there, because that will leave you the $23 left to bid on $1 for the rest of your roster. So it's a lot of strategies, a lot of things to think about. That's why I'm not going to say it's an intense league, but it's going to require some thought and before you do anything. But it's a lot of variables too. That was one of the fun parts of playing, franchise mode on Madden or NCAA, because this is like a true legit GM league. With the contracts, managing the money, managing the players, and then we still have to try to play and win too.
And there's no limit. You can have all your players be 2-year contracts or whatever the math works out to, right? There's no cap of like 3-4-year contracts or anything like that.
Nope. You're
Just
set
can't
to
exceed
60.
can't exceed the 60, and
Right.
yep, and you have to have at least 40.
But see, that's where you got to think, because he hadn't talked about penalties yet. Because like let's just say you could give everybody 4-year contracts, which that would be more than 60 years. But let's just say you could,
Right.
and then you draft this rookie that just
Trent Richardson, like we were talking about.
Yeah, sucks. Do you really want him on your team for 4 years because he's holding the spot and you can't do nothing? But you can't drop him, because if you drop him, now you got a 4-year contract on him, and you're gonna incur some some penalties. So it's a strategy on what you do.
You're going to be paying to trade him away.
Yeah, obviously, like if anybody drafts Patrick Mahomes, they're probably sticking 4 years on him. You want him for max time,
Right.
So there's no brainer on that one, But some of these players, when you start getting down and bidding like on $2 players and $3 players, I mean, you really want to slap a 4-year contract on them? Probably not. So Julio Jones, you probably won't slap a 4-year on. You probably want to maybe a 1 year. Maybe a 2-year. You might risk that. But you never know.
Yeah, we're also talking about today, and I don't know if Jeremiah updated the rules or not, but for injuries, obviously we have the IR slot, but we're not going to affect, we're not going to update the years or anything. Like, oh, sorry, OBJ went out game 1, and you lose him all year. That doesn't mean you get another free year. I mean, he's on the contract that you issued him, whether he plays or not. And that's just another wrinkle that we're going with, trying to be that real GM experience. So obviously you can see here I've got it highlighted. Dropping players, those are the penalties. 1 year remaining, you can do it free. 2 years remaining on the contract, obviously, you get a 1 year penalty, and so on and so forth.
And that penalty comes off of your overall available years of contracts, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So obviously we'll have the startup draft. The startup draft will have veteran players. It'll have rookie players, this year's rookies, so the Lawrences and Najees of the world. And then you will also have a pipeline draft slot. So, and that doesn't necessarily have to go in consecutive order too. If you know that you're going to take, Mississippi State, you can go ahead and put, pipeline slot 1.24 because probably nobody's going to take them. And that's the strategy that you want. Or you could go for 101 or 105 or 108 or however you guys have ranked your pipelines and whatever you think you will get them, but just you got to manage that money because you only get $1,000. So how valuable is the pipeline to you, or how valuable are the players? So once we do the
I
startup,
was going to ask, did you guys think about making it where you just had to actually put the team in there to bid on? Like somebody has to nominate Bama?
no, we're just going to do the
101?
pipeline draft slot, and then we'll do the pipeline draft immediately following, just like we always usually do.
Okay.
Because you never know what's, between you and Brian, who's 101. You know what I mean? He's going to take Penn State. You're going to take Bama.
Well, that'd be a mistake on his part.
I know, but I mean, that's you don't know how other people are.
No, I know. That's why I was saying it'd make it kind of interesting because everybody's sitting back thinking their team might not get nominated, and somebody nominates their team, it could create a bidding war.
Yeah, so you're going to have to know in your mind who you're aiming for and where you think
Wow.
everybody's going to fall. I personally, and I'm not giving anything away because it's pretty standard information, but you got to think the top three are going to be Bama, OSU, and Clemson, right? I mean, maybe somebody throws Georgia in there or something like that, but I mean, you've got to think those are probably going to be the top three. But you never know. You absolutely never know. Somebody could have OU there. Somebody could have, Miami. Who knows? It all depends. So after the startup draft, once our rosters are populated, all of our draft pipeline draft slots are issued, then we will immediately go into the pipeline draft. And this will be pretty quick. More than likely, we'll just do it over GroupMe. And it'll be like, hey, 101, you're on the clock. Okay, I pick Bama, I pick Clemson, OSU, Georgia, USC, whatever, until we have our 24 teams. And then we'll go, and that will be your new team name in the GroupMe chat and on the site. And we're also having a graphics guy this year that I know from Twitter doing all the graphics for the site. So you get some cool shit. We'll also probably do the helmet stickers and all that kind of jazz again too. But so then immediately following the pipeline draft, we're not going to have a rookie draft this year because we're going to put the rookies in the startup draft just because the timing really sucks because, we're August 28th is the first college football game. And then just a couple weeks after that is the first NFL game. So we really don't have a lot of time to fuck around. But after the pipeline draft, then we will do the Devy draft. Now, the initial Devy draft this year will just be a random generated order because really we don't have another. I mean, we could go in reverse order of pipeline picks, but, that could be a little sketchy. So, this year, since we're only doing one round, and most people will probably just Devy from their school or another school, we'll just do it randomly. And then all Devy drafts starting next year, we'll have the rookie free agent auction, and then we will have the Devy draft, which will be 2 rounds, and it will be based on the reverse order of points scored during the season. And once again, that's where your poaching comes in. I know some people who they could give 2 shits about Devy picks because they think they're all dart throws and they might not hit. And other people like, the Alabama owner, the OSU owner, more than likely those guys would hit. So, they trade that stuff. So just be prepared for that. We're also not going to do a thing where, hey, a little side bet, hey, I'll trade you my Devy, but promise not to pull from my college. Like we're not playing that game. We've done that in other leagues and lots of hurt feelings and people leaving chats and all that kind of jazz. So you know what we're doing here, you give your pipeline away, you give your Devy away. I don't care what kind of handshake deals you got. You feel free to get poached and I'll post it later, but you'll see the GIF, the standard, the poach GIF that we always use. So. Does anybody have any questions about the 3 drafts? All right. North and South nods. Very nice. So I think that kind of covers the contracts. Obviously, we'll have everybody watch this video, see if they have any questions. I will get back to you about the answer about which year is the pick for the compensation, and I'll post that in the chat. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. Honestly, like I said, Christian Welch has some experience with the auctions. I think more along the dynasty redraft, I think. Frank Gruber, who's in this league, he's actually in one of these leagues. So he does have some experience with that sort of stuff. But honestly, the rest of us, we don't have any contract experience. We are learning this as you guys are learning it. And that's why I didn't want to rush doing the startup draft. I think it's important that we get this out there. We get as many questions obviously answered as we can to prevent a lot of those hurt feelings and those crying sessions and these, oh, fuck this, I'm out type sessions, because that doesn't do anybody any good. Yeah, honestly, and that's why, we were very selective about who we put in the league, so questions.
I've never done an auction where multiple players are, I guess, on the board at the same time. Have you guys? Yeah.
Nope.
Chris, you have?
I have, but I mean, obviously not multiple of the same player, but multiple. I just did one this year. Me and Linkbot did. I think there's a couple other guys maybe in this league that did it too. Hold on.
Will you answer her? Jesus.
I know. Okay.
I thought you meant multiple copies of players just in general. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know you
multiple
meant
players.
bidding on multiple.
No, I
Yeah,
meant
there'll be-
like let's say there's 4 quarterbacks on the board and you're
Right,
bidding,
yeah,
and
I
then they
didn't-
close all
Yeah.
simultaneously. and
I have
you're
not
stuck
done
with
that either.
4
Then,
players.
So it definitely is going to take some strategy because, like you said, I mean, if you can't drop, how does it work too? Like,
Can you
I
withdraw?
was going to
bid?
ask, like, let's say you bid on all 4 of those quarterbacks and you drop, 300 on each one. Well, obviously that exceeds your $1,000. But if you're the max bid on all 4 of those, how does that work, CJ? You know what I mean? Like, if I win all 4 of them, I can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll figure that out. I think the system is set up so it wouldn't allow you to do that.
Okay.
Even if you were the winning bid, it wouldn't give it to you. But
I would
I will
assume
verify
because
that.
they won't all close out at the same time. So if the other 3 close out, it's going to subtract that money, and then your bid will be pulled from the 4th one, I would assume.
Yeah.
Can you withdraw a bid if you put it in? Let's say you put in a bid on 2 guys and then you get the one you want, but you're still high bid on the other player. Can you withdraw that?
I don't remember. That's a good
Yeah,
question. Never had
I'll
that.
check on that too.
I bet you probably can't, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I don't think you can.
I mean, if you like, to your point, if you're going in for 2, like Mahomes and whoever you got at number 2, I mean, if you got 400 on each of them, I mean, you're screwed if they both go through.
Well, you're probably, if you're bidding $400 on players, you're probably already screwed. That's going to drain you big time.
No,
you know?
I mean, I get that. I've done auctions.
Somebody will do it, though.
before,
Somebody's going to
for
drop
example.
some big money on some players and not think about the rest of their roster.
Auctions are a lot of fun, but I've only ever done them for redraft.
You gotta have some patience and some restraint, because if I got certain players I like, but I've already got, I've sat and put my limit of what I'm gonna bid on them, because if you I'm a big Bama boy, so if you didn't catch that, but I'm not going to blow my wad on Bama just to have them and sit back for 4 years. I don't want to do that. I want to have a decent team to compete. I might not win at year 1, but I don't want to be waiting to year 5 before my team even breaks 500. So
Remember, this is a double copy league too. So if you don't get the first Mahomes, you might be able to get him a little bit cheaper the second time around, or something like that.
Or he might be more expensive
More
the second
expensive,
round,
yeah.
because if everybody's waiting for the second one,
Yeah,
yeah.
you might get the bargain discount on the first one. You never know.
I'm kind of wondering about trades. I mean, maybe I'm thinking, I don't know. I have so many things going through my head here, but are you going to have scenarios where this team's competing, the other one's not. So the team that needs to rebuild, can they trade a shit contract for, I don't know, or I guess vice versa. They trade their good player because they have no chance of competing right now anyway. So they trade him as a contender, take on a shit contract, and get draft pick compensation along with it. I mean, you can have scenarios like that.
I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, however, there's always that point in the season. Usually, it's week 8 or something where if you're going to maybe make a run at it, or if you don't have a chance because injuries have hurt you, or the strength of schedule for your guys are kind of shitty. So you might want to blow it up. And you take on, as that win now play, you take on those shit contracts, you give up your assets and you go for, the money. And then hope to rebuild, Chris did that for one of the pipeline leagues, kind of went all in, gave away all of his future assets and youth, and ended up, winning the whole thing. And then he was kind of fucked for the next 2 or 3 years, So, it's what you want to do. But some people, like me and Brian and Linkbot, we love rebuilding. So we love doing the trades and getting the assets and, doing all the college stuff. So it all what floats your boat. Sometimes the NFL draft forces your hand too. I remember a few years ago, I had a playoff team, and then just the draft did not fall in my place. All these players went to, supplant my players, these studs, the Saquons and these wide receivers and, all them. And my guys were on the bench all of a sudden. So what do you do?
Going back to the auction draft, how are we going to determine when we're going to start the second pool of players? I mean, obviously not every player in the NFL is going to get drafted in the first go around. Yeah,
I think we're only allowed 50 total players, but since each player can only do 2 players at a time, we're at 48. But the system will not allow you to have 2 copies at the same time.
No, but what I'm saying is, nobody wants anyone left in the first pool, right? At that point, do we then decide, all right, let's move on to pool 2?
Well, what you're saying, so if somebody's nominated a player, that means you put a bid on him. So if nobody else cares about that guy, you're going to win him because you opened up the nomination with at least $1. So nobody will be left on the board and just go back in. So if they're nominated, they have at least $1 put against them. And if the 3 of us don't want him and Lang nominated him, Lang wins him for $1. So there's really no second round. It's just constant nominating of a player and people bidding. And until someone doesn't bid for more than 12 hours, then the winner, whoever has the highest bid for more than 12 hours, wins that player.
So when Mahomes is one, is the next Mahomes copy open right away?
Yes. When Mahomes comes off the board, somebody else can nominate Mahomes.
That makes sense to me.
There just can't be 2 Mahomes at the same time.
List of players and then moving on to another list.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's literally
so you don't have 2 Mahomes, so you don't have conflict if you're trying to bid on both of them because at least you want to get one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's set up just like eBay. So if you want to spend $5 on Justin Jefferson, the system's automatically going to put Justin Jefferson for $1. Nobody else is going to see your $5 proxy bid. But so Drew says, you know what? I like Justin Jefferson. I'll put a $2 bid. Well, then the bid's going to go to 3 because Chris has got the $5 bid in. And then John's like, oh, you know what? I'll spend $4. Well, guess what? His just goes away. And now Chris is the high bidder at 5. But then if anybody bids over him, then now he's screwed because he only put $5 on him. So, the system is always going to try to get the cheapest amount possible for you. You're not going to immediately go $977. That's the opening bid. The opening bid's going to be the least amount of money that's been put on this player.
Once you put a proxy bid and you get outbid, can you go back in and still bid?
Yeah, as long as you're not over your limit.
Okay.
So it doesn't show the proxy bid, and if nobody gets up to it, you get them for that.
Right.
Yeah, nobody knows. We don't know what you're putting on each player.
So that's why it's key who you nominate. I had no clue of that. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like poker, really.
Yeah. Wow, that does add a
You
wrinkle.
know, there's going to be some guys, there's going to be some studs that are going to go for super fucking cheap, just because we assume that somebody else has got a huge bid on them.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can assume when like a Mahomes drops out there, the proxy bid on him, you probably might as well figure is 200 plus. So I mean, if you bid $50, all you're going to do is just drive the $1 bid up, but you're not going to be the max bidder. So I mean, those proxies on the big time players are probably going to be high, but like when you get down to smaller players, like DJ Shark or something like that, the proxy bid might be $28. You know what I mean? So you could bid 30 and beat that real easy. So, but if you think Mahomes is going to drop out there and have a $2 bid on it, that's not going to happen.
So in that scenario, if the person proxies the player for 200, and then nobody can see that, everyone else is bidding on him, and if the highest bid where it ends is 50, the proxy guy gets him, right? And he gets him for how much then?
For $50.
So it's
I think it'd be 51. I think it pushes it up $1.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome, yeah.
Do you have to put proxy bids on players, or can you just keep an eye on it and keep bidding?
Yeah,
do what
you
you
can
want.
put a single bid on it each dollar amount, but if you know that you're willing to spend $50 on this guy, just throw $50 on there, because then okay, well, I don't want to go over this. So if somebody bids over it, then okay, I don't get them. I don't want to pay that price anyway. Or if two people bid on them, you could get them for $3.
Wow.
I mean, it can change. I mean, you don't have to
Yeah, I mean, you can go and put $1 on every bid.
all your 25 slots. So I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, you might adjust on some other play because I didn't hit this guy with the $50, so now I can put my proxy higher on this next guy that I really want. So that might change, but I think Lang's right. Why just put $1 if you're willing to bid more? You might as well put something that you're willing to bid at a high end, just so you don't have to keep watching it every minute, because I mean this is going to drag out over days,
Weeks.
weeks, and so.
And that's the thing, is that the wrinkle in this whole thing, that's just the players. What are people going to pay for pipelines?
I'm
So now
curious.
they're going to have a less wallet, and now you might be able to, if you're willing to take one of those later pipelines, now you're going to start getting some of those good players on the cheap, because they're out of money.
Yeah. Wow.
I can tell you that the top 5 pipelines are going to drag some money.
I would venture to say at least 50% of somebody's
They'll
purse.
drag some money.
Yep.
But honestly, if you think about it, though, I mean, it's worth it, because if you get the Alabama, the OSU, the Clemson, they're just going to be feeding your team for years for free.
I mean, Alabama put 4 guys, first-round picks, 4 rookies this year. Everybody's drafting. I mean, if you had Bama as your pipeline, you just put four guys, on your team theoretically.
So it's cheap,
Those guys are
yeah.
even going first round in a super flex.
Exactly. So what's cheap? You got to factor it in. What's cheaper for you? Is it to basically blow the first year of this league, or is it cheaper to buy 4 first-round picks next year? It's all it's all up to somebody's
It's just your
personal
strategy.
preference.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what keeps me up at night. I did not have any idea what people were going to spend on pipelines.
That's the fun part of it, man.
Yeah, but we've been in leagues with some of these other guys before and seen how chaotic things can get. So I can just imagine what's going to happen with some of these
You know what? I'm gonna venture a guess, and I will make a charity donation if I'm wrong. But I think we will get a $977 bid.
Really? Wow.
I think we will. And I'm not talking about myself. So I mean, 23 other dudes. I think somebody will put it on there.
All it takes is one, right?
Not me either.
So we'll see.
No. I don't know if it'd be that high, but I guarantee somebody hits some crazy numbers.
So somebody proxies the number 1 pipeline slot, right?
Yeah, it'll be a selection that you can pick from.
Yeah, you nominate Pipeline 101. The bad thing is if everybody bids on 101 and the guy wins it, you don't know he's taking Bama. He might be a Ohio State homer. You know what I mean? I want Ohio State, and so you're like, Bama just went. Well, you know what I mean? You might better bid on 102 for cheaper and get Bama. You don't know. That's the scary part about this, because I mean, you know, this year Bama was the strongest, but it doesn't mean they'll be the strongest next year. Clemson could put out a couple of strong, you know, guys. Ohio State, Oklahoma. You
How
know,
many years have you been saying that? 4 or 5?
I don't know.
At least the receiver, though, Ohio State's they're starting to become wide receiver university. I mean, there's a few that can say that, I suppose now, but they seem to be cleaning up they're getting some really nice receivers lately.
Yeah.
Last 2 or 3 classes.
Yeah,
I mean, if you had
they're all going to
Clemson,
be on
you
what
got,
people want.
you got Trevor Lawrence and NTN this year if you had Clemson.
Yeah.
You know?
But you're also gonna show a little bit of your hand too. You know, if you put out Mahomes and CMC and somebody else puts out Pipeline 101, 102, are you gonna really, you know, are you just putting that out there for everyone to bid on, or just because you really want it? You know, or you could, you know, kind of play the, oh man, I bet you somebody will put 105 out, so I'll kind of snake my way over there. So I mean, that's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to see how people go. And then as people start winning bids and losing bids, their strategy is going to change too. So
Auctions are fun.
don't.
Yeah.
You can't take the money with you, right? So.
Yeah, it's somebody playing the offensive strategy, the defensive strategy, nominating players just to get people to go, you know, wild goose chase.
Yeah.
You will know. So that's why you just got to pick your strategy, who you want, who you're willing to bid on, what your limits are, and stand by them. If you start falling apart on your limits, man, you can, which we've all done it. I think we've all been in drafts like, I got to have this guy, and you trade to get up there to get him. And the next, you know, and like 5 rounds later, like, man, why did I trade my second, third round pick to get that guy? You know what I mean? You know, so.
All right. So do you guys have any other questions? I don't want to take it on too long. I could sit there and bullshit all night.
I'm good.
Okay, so the 3 questions that the committee has to get back to everybody with is, in the compensations, is it the current year pick for compensation? Can you withdraw a bid? Question 2. And then question 3, what happens if you win multiple bids on a player, like, or a position group? You know, if you bid on, you know, 5 quarterbacks and you win 4, how does that work? So we'll figure that out.
One more question though on the bidding. Do you know on MFL's website, I think ESPN used to have it where there's a pass button. So let's say you're out on a player, it helps speed the draft up. You know, if 9 guys have passed on a player and only 2 guys have the available budget for him, you know, we're not waiting on all 11 teams to finish bidding.
You know, I'm not sure. I'll figure that. I'll see if NFL has that option.
I don't think many people utilize it all that much, but it does help speed things up later on in the draft.
Yep.
Also, like I was going to ask, do we need to maybe talk about too the level of the first round pick? If we know it's going to be like a high first round versus a late first round, does it change the value? Because basically what the picks do, guys, is when you have the picks at the end of the year and you have the 101, and that 101 turns into cash value. So now you have cash to bid on rookies. So like you could have 101 and get, let's say, $300, but then somebody else could have 108, 109, and 110, and they can get more cash that's worth more than what the 101 is and still outbid you. So it all turns into cash.
And obviously the value of the pick too. 101, you're going to get a starting quarterback. You know, 1.24, you could get a wide receiver, 8. You know, so we'll get some answers on that, and that's kind of why I didn't want to rush the draft today or tomorrow. So we'll get answers on this. We'll get everybody to watch this, and then any final things before Saturday morning starts, and then we're off to the races. So I appreciate you guys joining, and please let us know if you guys have any more questions.
Thanks for the call.
That's good. Yeah, thanks.
Later.
All right, guys.